Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited for this video because I realized that I have not done a Q&A in probably almost 4 years, and there's so many new people that are following me that have a lot of questions about my background, how did I get into coaching, past relationships, etc., etc. So I did a little poll on Instagram. If you are not following me, I'll put it over here as well as down below. You can come check me out there. I also did a poll here on YouTube on the community page, so if you are not a subscriber, don't forget to click subscribe down below. But a lot of the questions were the questions that I do get often. So I thought I'd kind of like compile a little list and get into all of the questions that you guys have for me about me. So I'm gonna start with kind of like business, past relationships, and then we'll do some general questions about myself. So probably a little bit longer of a video than I typically do, but here you go. One of the first questions I get really often is, how did you get into coaching? So I had done coaching in my early 30s when I was leaving a corporate job and starting culinary school, which was a big change for me. I felt very unfulfilled in my job at the time, and I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was kind of like at that point of, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I don't want to go to work every single day. I was getting massive anxiety and panic attacks going to work because it was just kind of like life's way of telling me you're doing the wrong thing. I did a little bit of coaching there, and it really helped me in terms of learning how to become mindful, understanding that a lot of what I was telling myself, negative self-talk, was assumptions and limiting beliefs. And it helped me in a way that I don't think therapy ever did. So if you've ever done therapy, and not that I have anything against it whatsoever, because I think it can 100% be very beneficial, it definitely answered a lot of questions for me, but it didn't help me in terms of moving forward. And so like, what do I do now with this codependency? What do I do now with this anxiety? What do I do now with this fear? Felt like coaching really helped me to move me forward. It helped me to set goals and really kind of work past all of the things that were really holding me back in life. How I actually started my business was kind of like two instances that happened that really kind of like hit me, and I said, wow, I think I could actually do this. One of them was, I was working after my divorce. We're going to fast forward to after the divorce. I was working in a corporate job. I went back to corporate work, and I was working with someone, and she had got to know me, and she always said I would be a really great therapist. She's like, you would be a great therapist. And I'm like, look, I'm too sensitive. I don't know if I could sit there all day and be a therapist and listen to people that are really going through some tough stuff. And I'm like, but I've done coaching, and I'd already gone through so much in my personal life and done so much self-development and work on myself that I was like, wow, I think I could actually help people. But I didn't really start it then. Then there was another instance where I was in court for something. I wasn't getting divorced, it was something else. And you know that if you've ever been divorced, when you get divorced, you actually go to court and you're in the courtroom with a lot of other people that you don't know, and you get divorced in front of total strangers, basically. And it's a very personal experience, and you do it in a very impersonal way. I was sitting next to this woman who was getting divorced, and I was already divorced at the time. I was kind of like unknowingly coaching her through the process. And she got up and she got divorced. And as she left the courtroom, and I was still sitting there because I was waiting for my turn, she actually found me. She locked eyes with me and looked at me and said, like, she just said thank you to me. And in that moment, I was like, oh, that's so great. Like, I helped her in some way, you know? And my attorney at the time that I was sitting with said, you would be a great divorce coach. And I was like, absolutely no. I am not sitting in a courtroom all day long, and I'm not going to coach people through that process. Long story short, here I am. There came a point where I just said, you know what? Let me try this. Let me just see. And it was actually one of the times, aside from culinary school, where I just said, screw it. I'm just going to jump into something and I'm just going to try it. And I did little bits at a time, and it just kind of evolved into what it is today. The goal of me doing this was, I realized how many people would go through these really painful experiences, and they would let these experiences either make them really bitter, really angry, or they never really got over it. And I had personal experience of that in my own life with women and men that I knew. And I knew that if I can go through something horrific and get through it and heal, everyone else can. And I think that was kind of like the point of me doing this, is I really felt like I wanted to help people that had gone through something very similar to what I had been through. So there you have it. What are your key personality strengths, and how do they work in your business model? Ooh, great question. So I definitely think one of my strengths is I am a true Capricorn. I love to achieve. I love goal setting. I think I'm very organized. I'm very efficient. I definitely know that I have leader traits. I feel like I always had this entrepreneurial thing in me. I can manage my own time. I can self-motivate for the most part. I'm fairly good at it. Every now and then we procrastinate resonate. Of course, we're human, but I think it helps just in terms of owning your own business in general. And you have to really have all of those qualities, and you have to know every aspect of your business, but you also have to be able to get out of the worker role and become the leader and the manager. And I think I've had a lot of previous work experience that helped me in that. Every job I've ever had has led me to this career path that I'm on. So I really truly believe that everything happened for a reason, and every skill that I took either from corporate jobs or even jobs that I absolutely hated, there was something that you will always take away from those jobs, those careers, and you'll utilize them in your future. So I don't know who it is. There's some entrepreneur, I think he's on Shark Tank. I think he's the guy that owns the Mavericks, and I forget his name. And he did this video once where he said, look, when you are young, do everything you can, work at every job, whether it's like any little thing to, eventually something that's like a little bit more responsibility, and take from that job. Don't just look at it as someone hiring you and they're taking your time and your experience and your work ethic. Also take from that opportunity as well to be able to cultivate, a really good skill set that you'll have for yourself. And I 100% buy that. How do you go about maintaining your strength and professionalism being a sensitive person? For me, one thing doesn't have anything to do with the other. So while I would love everyone to be healed and to get it, I do think coaching is very different than therapy. So when you do coaching, especially because it's not recognized by insurance companies, which means it's an out-of-pocket expense. So for most people, don't get me wrong, they have disposable income and they're okay with paying for coaching and not really doing the work. But I do think most people make it a point to save and to believe that they're worthy of this type of investment. And when they do that, they take it more seriously, like they're ready. And that was also one of the reasons why I didn't want to go into therapy and I did want to do coaching, was because I wanted a person who is ready to take responsibility for themselves. What's your past education? I have a bachelor's in business management. Did you leave your toxic relationship or did he discard you? I was discarded and I did not leave the relationship. It was not something that I even saw coming. I was 100% blindsided by it. I had just had my son, and a month later, my ex-husband had asked me for a divorce. How did you work through your anger and not wanting to get revenge on the person that hurt you? I mean, I definitely think that anger is a part of it. You have to go through all of these different emotions and feelings that you have, being discarded, being hurt, being betrayed, being let down. That's normal. I never really judged myself for it, but I also very much and quickly understood what was really going on here. So I understood why someone was doing what they were doing, and it didn't mean that I didn't always take it personally, but I do think 9 times out of 10, I did not take it personally. I understood what was happening, and it allowed me to respond more to that person and to life and to my feelings than to just react always to how I was feeling or the person in front of me that was trying to hurt me. How I worked through my anger personally, I worked out a lot, 100%. That was a thing. I let myself feel when I needed to feel, when I needed to be angry or cry or vent, but I didn't let myself stay in those spaces for too long. And I started really working on my discipline to not let myself just go down rabbit holes and not just feel like I was a victim. I was a victim, but I didn't want to live in the victim state. How do you manage co-parenting? For me, co-parenting is all about consistency and boundaries. It doesn't mean someone's going to respect your boundaries, but it does mean that you have to be consistent with them. At the end of the day, you can only control yourself. And so for me, there were times where there was a lot of parallel parenting going on and I had to accept that. And then there were times where, everyone's playing nice in the sandbox and that was great, but I didn't always believe that we're always going to play nice forever and ever. I think even the couples that can even somewhat do it amicably are going to have tough times when they're co-parenting, because there's a reason why you're not together. And just because now you have to co-parent, you still have to have a relationship with each other. So I never really understood people that could have really great co-parenting relationships. Then what is it that didn't work out between the two of you? Because for me, I always look at it like, if you are sexually attracted to someone and you want the same things, meaning values and beliefs are in alignment, then what's the reason why a relationship can't work? Chances are it's 1 or 2 people that are unhealed and do not want to work on those wounds. And at the end of the day, those are the wounds that are actually getting in between you two having a really great relationship. How did you manage your emotions when another woman came in your son's life? Any advice, please? So I think for me personally, because the person was involved in the discard. For me, it was a little bit difficult in the beginning, but I did know at the end of the day that my feelings that I had towards that person in regards to my relationship with my ex-partner was very different than my son. So as long as my son was happy, as long as my son was in a good space, I also had to accept that not every, and for me this was a tough one, that not every woman is going to respect another woman. For me, and it sounds so bad that we will give men a pass, but there is something about that girl code and woman to woman and making sure that you respect her and understand where she's coming from. And sometimes not every woman's going to give that to you. And that is difficult, don't get me wrong. When someone doesn't respect you as the mother or respect you in general, that's a tough thing. That's not something that's easy to handle. But if you can push that aside, at the end of the day, you don't need to be friends with anyone. You don't need to be angry and not be able to be amicable, but you also don't need to be someone's best friend in order for the child to feel like there's no tension in the room and everyone's good. But I do also think that if my son's happy, I'm happy. How did you heal yourself after your love cheated on you? I don't know how to let go. Being cheated on is something that is not easy to go through, and it depends on the situation. If you've been betrayed and cheated on and the person wants to work it out and you have to forgive and kind of like let that go in order to move forward in the relationship, that's very different than someone just discarding you and not wanting you ever. So for me, it was easy. I didn't believe that all men were cheaters. I didn't believe that all men just like leave their wives. I didn't believe that all men have affairs. So that was never really a story that like played in my mind. But I definitely had points where I kind of was like, how could I ever trust someone again? Especially when I fully loved that person and was in that relationship with them. And that's a lot of like grieving that you have to do. And you kind of have to really like work on yourself and feel good in your own skin in your own life, and then you will start to trust people. You will slowly be able to become vulnerable again with another person. Like I knew eventually I would get there. I didn't have the story that said, oh my God, I'm never gonna be able to talk to anyone else. I'm never gonna be able to be in a relationship. How can I trust anyone? Am I gonna be paranoid every single time, my new partner is texting someone else? And you will definitely have post-traumatic stress. I definitely saw that. I was probably single for like 4 years, and then I got into another relationship, my current relationship. And I remember in the early stages when he would do something or text or something that reminded me of that past experience, I remember feeling the post-traumatic stress. I remember feeling the fear and the worry of like, what is he doing? What is he doing? Whereas I had never felt that before. So I always tell people, you can work on yourself all day long being single, but the minute you get into a relationship, now you are going to be challenged. All of those wounds and those insecurities are going to come up. So by all means, work on yourself, but don't feel like you need to be healed in order for you to fully get into another relationship, because stuff's gonna come up regardless. Did you ever have an inkling or a gut feeling that your marriage wasn't quite right? I don't think I fully knew myself in order to really answer that question. So in hindsight, now I can see everything. But at the time, I think my intuition was telling me something, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. And because I couldn't pinpoint something, I didn't think it was a red flag or a problem for me. Is there any red flags that you ignored? I think early on, again, I did get these gut feelings where I remember like having these thoughts about the person in terms of their personality and in terms of their maturity level, and I just didn't follow through. I just had a lot of fear. I definitely wanted to get married, but I definitely made it be known. Like I've always been a person that would tell people exactly what I think and how I feel and what I want. And I think that I just wanted to believe something and portray someone in a certain way and wanted this deep connection and this deep relationship. And I thought it was progressing in that way. And when it wasn't, I probably was too knee deep in the relationship to want to actually leave it and get out, because I couldn't really fully see what I see now. Because I also wasn't basing the relationship on anything. So I didn't really, I tell my clients this all the time. When we start dating, there's not a lot that we're taught about being in a relationship. There's not a lot of healthy things that we hear, especially as women. I'm 41, being a child of the 80s. The only thing I ever heard was make sure he has a good job, make sure he doesn't hit you, make sure he's not an alcoholic. I mean, that was basically it. Chivalry and opening the car door, like, yeah, maybe some of those things, but at the end of the day, we're not talking about the foundation of an actual friendship and what it means to be with a healthy person. That I didn't know anything about. All right, next question. How did you learn to trust again? Again, I knew that not everyone is going to be like how just one person was. It wasn't a matter of like me trusting myself. It was that I understood that I didn't have control over anyone else. I trusted that I would make the best decision with what I knew. I didn't judge myself for the decisions that I made in the past because those were the best decisions that I made based on who I was and what I knew at that time. So I don't regret anything. I also knew that the more I educate myself, the more I'm able to make better decisions. And that allowed me to have a lot of trust that I would pick people that were really good for me. But then to go a little further with it, I also can't control anyone. And if someone wants to wake up tomorrow and decide to be a different person, I have no control over that. I do know, though, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. And that's a mantra that I always repeat to myself because it's the truth. After your divorce, how long did it take you to get into another relationship? For me personally, it took me 4 years, but I also had a baby at the time, and that was my focus. It was either my son, me, and for a while, I just didn't have the energy for anything else. And quite frankly, I didn't want anything else. I just wanted to be with my son. I wanted to be with myself. I wanted to be with my girlfriends, and I wanted to like rebuild my life before I wanted to just like jump into another relationship with someone. It just wasn't the priority at the time for me personally. I don't think you need a certain amount of time. I think things are just going to happen in the time frame that they're supposed to happen in, and I truly believe in that. How did you find Jason, and how long have you guys been together? We actually met on Bumble, so as much as I always said I didn't want to meet anyone on a dating app, there you have it. But we've been together for almost 5 years. How did you know it was a healthy relationship? First off, I think that you can only know if someone's healthy and good for you over time. It just takes time to get to know a person, and in the time period that you're dating them and getting to see who they really are, all of their flaws, their weaknesses, their strengths, their past, their wounds, everything as it starts to get exposed, you have to just be very mindful of it, and you have to be okay that if I see something now that is a huge red flag, can I actually walk away? If you don't feel like you could walk away from a relationship because you want something, you want a marriage, you want children, you want something, that thing that you want, if you want it so badly, you're going to make a bad decision. You're going to overlook the red flags. If there's some kind of fear or insecurity there of you just being by yourself, then you're not going to make good decisions. So I don't fear being single whatsoever. It doesn't mean that I want to go and do it right now and be single and that is more important to me than being in a relationship. No, but I also know that my standards are a non-negotiable, and this is what I deserve in relationships. And if I don't get it, I'm fine with walking away. I think it was more about like me being healthy before being able to spot if someone else was. But for me, I felt completely calm. I felt completely calm with this person. I felt like I'd always known this person. I felt like I could talk very easily with this person, but I was more comfortable with my own self, and I think that's why I was also able to be vulnerable with someone. But what I always wanted to know was, how is this person going to show up for me? So I always got compassion, I always got heartfelt words, I always got consistency. So those were kind of like the things that made me know like, okay, I feel safe in this relationship, and that's something that I had never felt before. Would you like to remarry? I don't personally look at marriage the same way I did before. I believe I'm in a marriage. I believe I'm in a very committed relationship, and everyone has different views on marriage, but for me, I'm not against it, but at this point in my life, I don't feel a need for it. How did you manage your own insecurities resurfacing from your past relationship when you were in the early stages of dating in your current relationship? So for me, whenever my wounds would come up, I would completely own them. They're mine. I would remind myself of what the truth is. So even when the little voice was like, hey, what is he doing? Who's he texting? I would immediately have that self-parenting moment where I'm like, why do we need to know? Why do we need to know exactly what he's doing? Do we trust him? Do we have any reason not to trust him? And then I would just completely let it go. Next question. Were you codependent? Yes. Yay, it's codependent. How did you overcome your codependency? One of the first things that I started doing constantly is every time someone would ask me of something, either ask me to do something or whatever, I would always kind of stop and pause and actually find out if I wanted to do this. Do I want to do it right now? Is it good for me to do it right now? Should I be doing it right now? So I kind of started with that, and it started to train myself on being more connected with what I thought and how I felt versus just like being a robot and, living life through this codependency. When I did do things for people, I also wanted to know, why did I want to do this? Did I want to do this because I wanted this person to change, because I thought that this is the way they should be living their life? Did I do this because I was struggling and I didn't want to see them suffer? So I really learned how to create really healthy boundaries within myself. And that was kind of like the start of me healing that stuff. I also think that when you really do self-parenting and you know it, and it is like second nature to you for you to do this stuff, you're not codependent anymore. Because you learn how to fill yourself up, you learn how to give yourself validation, love, self-soothing, motivation. You learn how to accept yourself and not judge yourself. So all the things that you were looking for people outside of you to give you, if you're giving it to yourself, then guess what? You're healed, and you're not looking for all of those things the way you used to in your previous experiences. How did you become so knowledgeable on mental health? I think one thing led to another. So the first thing that kind of like was my aha moment was when I realized I was highly sensitive. I learned I was highly sensitive. I learned I was an empath. I learned I was codependent. Then I learned about narcissism. I learned about mindfulness and law of attraction and like all of these different concepts. I learned how to manage my anxieties. So as I began learning, it just kind of like, it was like I took one class after another, and it just became this like, great foundation of really good knowledge that, quite frankly, I just wish was either taught in schools or that our parents were able to teach us. But no one can teach you this stuff unless they know it themselves and implement it themselves. So for me, that's where all the knowledge came from. It was really wanting to feel better, wanting to feel my best, wanting to achieve, wanting to have, and it kind of just evolved into something. What are you most afraid of? Rational things or irrational things? So I do not like heights. I do not like rides. I do not like going fast. I definitely don't like being out of my comfort zone. So I definitely have controlling tendencies. Something that I just don't enjoy is feeling uninspired. If I'm not like motivated, and if I don't have like drive and purpose and reason, I don't like that feeling. I feel very unproductive. I just feel blah. So I 100% always need to feel like I'm working towards something. Again, it's just the Capricorn in me. What inspires you the most? There's two things that kind of like fuel my inspiration and my drive. Probably three things. Number one, there's so many people that have experienced the same things as me, and I truly want to help as many people as I possibly can, because the pain that you go through, if you understand how to deal with the pain, it will literally change your life in the best possible way. And if I can teach anyone that or help anyone with that, that's it. That's what I'm here to do. That is my life purpose, and I truly believe that. My inspiration definitely comes from my son. I want him to look back and be super proud of his mom and what she accomplished and what she did with her life based on her circumstances and the things that she's gone through. So for sure, I want him to see that example. I am also super inspired by my mother. The day where I can go into her work and tell her that she can quit her job, that is going to be like the best day ever. So those are like kind of like the two things that like just always, or three things that just like always keep me going. And I always am super mindful of especially those two people, my son and my mother. It's funny too, because there's been so many times where I've been out and about and someone has recognized me. And every time, except for one time, every other time, my son has been with me. And he is always so like amazed when someone says, hey, I know who you are. Like, I love your channel. Keep doing a great job. I love your videos. They've helped me so much. And when he hears that, that's just like such a proud mommy moment that I have, because I just want him to see that your career or something that you're meant to do in life to have an impact in someone's life is just like an absolute game changer. It's so much more fulfilling and beneficial to be able to do something besides just getting someone's coffee or answering a phone. And so trying to find that fulfillment for himself is something that I'm always going to push for him, is to know yourself so well and know your strengths and how can you use your natural gifts to basically help people. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you just a little bit of an insight as to who is Stephanie and what has she been through and how did she get here. So I hope you have enjoyed this, and I'll see you next week.